Alright, section 8000. How to read symbols in the hydraulic schematic. Case Corporation, 700 State Road, Ranson, Wisconsin, 53404 USA. Alright, how to read symbols in a hydraulic schematic. Introduction, circuit diagram, symbol systems using schematic. Symbols, reservoirs, line tubes, hoses, crossing join lines, pump symbols. Hydraulic motor symbols, cylinder symbols, pressure control symbols, normal closed, normal open, relief valve, pressure reducing valve, sequence valve, directional control symbols, simplified symbols, one-way valve, bypass valve, composite symbols, one-way valve, two-position valve, three-position valve, actuated controls, flow control symbols, restrictors, accessories, node symbols, schematics, common symbols, line functions, mechanical devices, pump, motors, reservoirs, cylinders, valves, actuators, accessory. Note, Case Corporation reserves the right to make improvements to the design, changing in specification anytime when occurring, and an obligation to install them on the units previously sold. Alright, how to read symbols in hydraulic schematic. Introduction. Accurate diagrams of hydraulic circuits are essential to the man who must repair them. The diagram shows how the components interact, shows the field technician how it works with what each component should be doing, whether the oil should be going, so that it can diagnose and repair the system. The purpose of this section is to show how to find your way around a schematic circuit diagram. Circuit diagrams. There are two types of circuit diagrams. Cutaway circuit diagrams show internal construction components as well as flow paths by using color shades, various patterns in the lines, wet passages. They're able to show many different conditions of flow, pressure, current. Wave diagrams take a considerable long order to produce there because of their complexity. 2. Schematic circuit diagrams. The shorthand system of the industry uses preferred for troubleshooting. Its schematic diagram is made of simple geometrical symbols for components and their controls and connections. Symbol systems are several systems of symbols we use making schematic diagrams. They are ISO, International Standard Organization, ASI, and American National Standard Institute, ASA, American Standard Association, JIC, Joint Industry Conference. A combination of these symbols are shown in this section. The difference between the symbols, but there is enough similarity to understand the symbol in the section. Will be able to interpret the other symbols as well. Alright, using schematic symbol of the reservoir. To the left, the vented reservoir. To the right, the pressurized reservoir. Rectangle with the top move represents the vented reservoir. Rectangle with the top in place represents a pressure reservoir. Pressurized reservoir. Alright, pressurized reservoir on the left, pressurized reservoir on the right. There are other schematics that show slightly different versions of pressurized reservoirs, but the symbols are similar and easily recognized as an oval short line with the top of the rectangular curve, so it's representing the reservoir that is pressurized. Alright, these three lines show the return line above the oil level. Lines connected to reserve actually drawn from the top regardless of where the actual connection is. Suction line with the return below the oil level. The hydraulic line terminates below the fluid level. It is the drawn away for the bottom of the symbol. Alright, line underneath the reservoir. Suction line attached to the bottom. Hydraulic connected with the bottom of the reservoir may be the drawn bottom of the symbol as if the bottom connection is essential symbol system's operation. Shows the pump. The pump inlet must be in charge flood with a positive head of oil above the inlet port would be positioned with the reservoir above the pump symbol. The draw of the suction line out of the bottom of the reservoir symbol. Every vehicle or system reservoir has at least two hydraulic lines connected to it, and some may have many more. Often the components are connected with the reservoir with the spread over all over the schematics rather than having a lot of the confusing lines over the schematic. And it's customary to draw individual reservoir symbols close to the components of the reservoir is usually the only component symbol pictured more than once. Line tubes and hoses. A hydraulic line tube or hose or any conductor carries the fluid between the components as shown in the line. A working line shows inlet pressure is returned, shown in the solid line. It shows the oil flows one way. Oil can flow either way. Working lines of the arrows show the direction of the flow. Pilot controls are all broken into long dashes. Drain lines for leakage are broken into short dashes. A flexible line shows the arc between two dots is always represented as a solid line. Quite often you'll see an enclosure outline indicates that there are several symbols that make up the component assembly, such as the valve with the valve stack with an enclosure with the outline, and some appears like a box with the broken with the dashes on all sides. Crossing joining lines. Lines that are not connected are shown in 3 different spots. The shortest distance between 2 components that are connecting is a straight line. The lines cross other lines but are not connected several ways to show the crossing. Dot connection. Lines are connected. T connections. And lines are connected that shown with a dot with a representative of the connection or shown with a T connection with a dot with the connection is most commonly used when drawing the schematic symbol. Alright, pump symbol shows the outlet and inlet with a fixed displacement and the fixed displacement reversible. There are many basic pump designs. Simple reflects fixed displacement pump shown with a circle with a black triangle with the heads pointing outwards. The black triangle is like an arrow. The head points in the direction the oil will flow. If the pump is reversible, designed to pump in either direction, it will either have 2 black triangles and there will be opposite each other. Shows variable displacement and variable placement pressurized compensated. Variable displacement is designated with drawing an arrow through the pump symbol at 45 degrees to indicate the variable displacement pressure compensated pump. A small box with an arrow will be added with the side of the pump symbol. Lever control or pedal or treadle control. The pump is controlled with a lever or pedal. It will be shown on the side of the pump. The pump with the drive shaft. The pump with the drive shaft with the direction arrows. Drive shaft is shown with the 2 short parallel lines extending on the side of the pump. The curved arrow shown on the drive shaft indicating the direction of the rotation. Hydraulic motor symbols. Non-reversible motor, reversible motor. Hydraulic motor symbols are circled with black triangles, but opposite with the pump, the triangles pointing inward to show that the motor is receiving oil. 1 triangle is used with the non-reversible motor. 2 triangles are used with the reversible motor. Shows with the pump and the motor. Schematic diagram shown with a hydraulic motor connected with a hydraulic pump. Cylinder symbols rectangular and T. Cylinder symbol is a simple rectangle with a representative of the barrel of the piston and rod represented by a T with it inserted with the rectangle. The symbol can be drawn in any position. Alright, shows the port and a single acting cylinder, 2 ports and a double acting cylinder. Cylinder is single acting with only 1 port shown on the symbol. The shown is the end of the cylinder with the receiver of the pressurized fluid. Opposite end of the cylinder is left open. Double acting cylinder symbol has both the end closes and 2 ports on the symbol. Double rotted end cylinder. End cylinder has a rod extending from each end of the rectangle. Single rod fixed cushion both ends. Cylinder rod and adjustable cushion rod end only. Some cylinders have cushions built into them. The cushion shows down the movement of the piston near the end of the stroke of the cylinder cushion are shown in a smaller rectangle on the position, and the cushion has an adjustable or slanted arrow drawn in 45 degrees across the symbol. Pressure control symbol. The basic symbol of the square is called with the envelope. The external port over the connection with the arrow inside show that the oil passes the direction of the flow. Usually the type of the valve operates by balancing oil pressure against a spring, and so the spring shown on one side of the symbol and the pilot pressure line on the other. Normally closed. Shows the outlet normally closed with the arrow offset of the ports inlet and outlet of the spring and the pilot line. The arrow is aligned with the ports, so mentally visualize the square moving towards the spring. Normally closed valve such as the relief valve, sequence valve, the shown with the arrows offset with the port toward with the pilot pressure for the side of the square of the spring holds for the valve closed with the pilot line oil pressure greater than the spring pressure. Mentally visualize the buildup of the pressure into the pilot line, square moving over the compressing spring with an oil canal flow through the valve. Normally, show the spring and the pilot line with the inlet and outlet normally with a mentally visualize the square moving toward the spring. Normally open and closed valves shown with the arrow connecting with the 2 ports, the close of the pressure overcoming the spring force, mentally visualize the build-up of the pressure of the pilot line, square moving, pressing the spring, the oil flow for the valve is now blocked. Alright, show for the pressure line with the pump and relief valve. The relief valve shown with the normally closed symbol to connect with the pressure line with the reservoir with the flow direction points away from the pressure line port toward the reservoir. It shows graphically how the relief valve operates when the pressure is in the system. Overcomes the valve spring flows into the pressure line with the relief valve with the reservoir. Pressure reducing valve with a high pressure inlet with a reduced outlet pressure with the pilot line and drain lines with the reservoir. Pressure reducing valve shown with a normally open symbol with the pressure line of the valve works opposite with the relief valve with the sense of the outlet pressure versus inlet with the pressure outlet pressure build with the works against with the predetermined spring force overcome. Flow through the valve is modulated or shut off. Alright, sequence valve show the relief valve, the supply line with the pump, the reservoirs, the primary cylinder with the sequence valve with the secondary cylinder. Normally closed symbol with the sequence of the valve with the inlet port. It's going to give the primary cylinder with the outlet port with the secondary cylinder line with the piston with the primary cylinder reaching for the end of the stroke with the pressure supply line increases. Sequence valve with also connected supply line also filled with the increase of the pressure increase with the square. In the direction flow of the arrow with the connected with the inlet with the outlet ports line. Fluid flow with the secondary cylinder. Directional control symbol, the simplified symbol is one-way flow with no flow with the free flow. Single ball check valve is shown while the oil pressure is not extended to the left side of the ball. With the ball is forced into the V. No oil can flow from past it. When the oil is applied to the right side of the ball moves away from the V, and the oil can flow past it. Bypass valve shift the spring and added to the simple side one-way valve, ball check valve. Bypass valve shown in one way with the spring on the ball end of the cymbal is shown with a pressurized flow with the necessary to overcome the spring force allowing the ball around the ball. Composite symbols one-way valve, no flow one-way valve shown in the closed position, and mentally visualize the bill with the up of the pressure on the right side of the valve with the spring free flow. More complex one-way valves now shown with the direction control symbol, the multiple envelope square system that separates the square from each position. Remember, all of the port connections are made with the envelope and shown with the neutral condition of the valve right within the envelope are arrows shown with the flow path with the valve is shifted to that position. Two position valves show the pump relief valve with the control valve with the control cylinder right and the cylinder piston ends. Simple control valve has two envelopes representing the spool with the two positions valves with the envelope shown and the flow condition with the one one position above schematic shown with the oil being supplied to the right end of the cylinder and mentally visualize the direction control valve moved to the other position would be shown as below. Here's pressurized oil being supplied with the piston end of the cylinder. Oil from the right end of the cylinder is allowed to flow through the reservoir. Open center 3-position valve. Closed center 3-position valve. 3-position valves with the center and neutral position. Central position can either be open, closed, or flow. With the open center, with the usually used on fixed displacement pump. With the closed center, usually used in variable displacement pumps. Actuating control lever pedal. 2-position controlled by external pilot pressure. 2-position controlled by solenoids. 3-position solenoid controlled by internal pilot assisted pressure. Valve spools are controlled with the levers, pedals, and pilot oil, electrical solenoids, etc., which call for the actuating control. These actuating controls are shown by symbols placed on the ends of the envelopes. Solenoid control internal pilot pressure shows the spring 3-position spring centered to show the valve center with the spring symbol with the place of the each envelope above the schematic shown with the electrical solenoid pilot pressure of the system required to overcome the spring force to move the valve spool. Flow control symbols, restrictors, non-adjustable restrictor, adjustable restrictor. Physical flow control symbol, the representation resistors adjustable slanted arrow and drawn across the symbol. The resistor could be a special fitting with a small hole with a small drill passage within the valve. The adjustable restriction could be through a water faucet that can be controlled by turning the handle with a regulating flow. Restrictor can be applied to meter out, meter in, or bleed off circuits. Adjustable restricted pressure compensated, adjustable restrictor pressure and temperature compensated. These adjustable restrictors of the pressure compensator that means the size of the opening of the restrictor will change with increase or decrease in pressure. Perpendicular arrow that indicates a pressure compensation. If the restrictor is both pressurized, and with the temperature compensation symbol of the thermometer will be also shown. Alright, accessories, filters and strainers, heat exchangers represented with a square with a turn 45-degree angles held with a port with a connection with a corner center line. Perpendicular flow of the line indicates filter or strainer. Solid line perpendicular flow with a black triangle with pointing out with the indicator's cooler. Symbol is the heaters like the symbol of the cooler except with the black triangles pointed in. Two sets of the triangles pointed in and out indicates the temperature control unit. As you can see, the black triangles point with the direction of the heat is dissipated, or in the case of the control unit, they show that the heat can be regulated. An oval details indicate the accumulator, with the details inside will tell you if the accumulator is in spring load with the gas charger or other features. Gas charger, the divider line indicates there is a separator between the charge and the oil, and the hollow triangle indicates the gas. Spring show that the accumulator and the spring loaded. Simple schematic. Now that you have completed a hydraulic symbol, you can put some of the symbols together with a simple hydraulic symbol to find your way around the schematic without reading the text for each. For the text explains each of the functionality of the hydraulic system. So with the double port, single cushion, 3-position valve, spring, envelopes, ball check valve, reservoir with a spring, and pump, flow, and filter, reservoir, three centered reservoirs, one with 4, and a tented float and springs, envelopes on all those with one, something I don't know what that little circle there is, to a double-ended spit, and then a D is a heater, C is a reservoir, and then B is double acting cylinder. Valve A with a 3-position valve with a spool lever with the operator with the spring string with the open center valve with the visually with the envelope with the center position with G with the valve directly open or one end of the other in the cylinder A while the spool and the valve A is moved out from the center position with the downstream, and that shit with valve A was a 3-position valve. Valve B is similar to valve A with a 4-position valve with the 4th position, float position held with the position with the detent with the valve with the cylinder B can be extended, retracted, placed in the float position, visualize with the envelope of the float position, and let passage you will see with the oil continue to flow with the next valve with the downstream with the rod cylinder B could be pushed back and forth. The oil could be removed with one end of the cylinder, the other V with the valve with the both extend with the cylinder connect with the return line reservoir. Alright, valve B would valve B was right here. It was a 4-position valve. Valve C is similar to valve A, but it's designed to control the single acting cylinder. Visualize placing an upper envelope with the center position. You'll see that the oil can drain back to the reservoir from cylinder C. At the same time, the oil from the pump can flow through valve C with the next valve. So you have valve C as the reservoir right here, and here's the other. It can flow back into the reservoir. It was is similar to 3-position valve. Valve D is a lever operated with a spring center valve with a designated with a control hydraulic with a hydraulic motor with a flywheel with the oil supply with the return with a shut off abruptly would cut with the damaged hydraulic line with the motor whatever is powering, but therefore when the valve is supplying with the motor is shut off. The motor should be also slowed down gradually to turn neutral position with the valve D will allow the happening of letting the oil from the outlet within the motor return to the inlet side. As you've seen with the briefing information you will need with the read hydraulic schematics, the more you use it, the more you will be comfortable using the hydraulic schematics as the troubleshooting. And then you see valve D. And then it's common symbols: solid line, dash line, dotted exhaust, drain line, enclosure outline, line crossing, line joining, line liquid direction of flow, gaseous flow direction, flexible. 2 parallel lines, mechanical 2 parallel lines, arrow, variable component running through the symbol at 45 degrees, a spring, pumps and motors, hydraulic pump with a fixed displacement, hydraulic pump with a variable displacement, pressure compensated variable displacement pump, fixed displacement, hydraulic 2 flow direction, hydraulic motor fixed displacement, hydraulic motor variable displacement, hydraulic oscillator, reservoirs open to the atmosphere, pressurized reservoir, line to reservoir below fluid level, line to reserve above fluid level, single acting cylinder, double acting single rod end cylinder, double acting double ended rod cylinder, double single rod fixed cushion both ends, single rod adjustable cushion rod end only, differential cylinder, valve, check valve, pilot operated check valve, on and off manual shut off valve, regulating air selector valves, 2-position 2-way valve, 2-position 3-way valve, 2-position 4-way valve, 3-position 4-way valve, 2-position 4-way valve, open, cross center, crossover, Variable comparable to infinite with position with indicated horizontal lines drawn by the parallel to the envelope. Pressure relief valve. Pressure reducing valve, non-adjustable restrictor. Adjustable restrictor pressure compensated. Adjustable restrictor temperature and pressure compensated. Solenoid, detent, spring, manual, push button, push pull lever, pedal, mechanical, pressure compensated, pilot pressure remote assembly, remote supply, liquid supply, accessories, filter, cooler, heater, temperature controller, actuator, hydropneumatic, reversing motor, stationer test point, pressure indicator, temperature indicator, pressure switch, quick disconnected, quick disconnect, disconnected, quick disconnected, connected. And this was how to read symbols of a hydraulics symbols. Read the symbols in a hydraulic schematic.